I'm the Book Baron. Welcome in, everybody. If you're new here, my name is Baron, and today we are going to be talking about some books on my TBR that scare me, make me nervous, however you want to say it. It's a spooky time of year, so I wanted to go over some books that are on my TBR that I've been meaning to get to for like 3 to 5 business years, and I just haven't because I talk myself out of it every time, and there's a whole variety of reasons actually that I'm nervous to read them, and some of these aren't even romances. Let's get going, shall we? So the first one that I have is one that I have owned physically for years. I have a friend that loves it. I've even checked out the audio from my library with the best of intentions of reading it and returned it still. It's My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. So this is a standalone. You'll see it a lot on like best of lists or must read lists. It's not a romance, it's a contemporary, but it's got like kind of a student-teacher relationship in there, and it's centered around a lot of the early Me Too movement. From my understanding, this story alternates between Vanessa's perspective as a high schooler and her adult life 17 years later. She's exploring her relationship, quote unquote, that she had with her 42-year-old English teacher, which she believed, at least at the time when she was 17, that it was a love story. And now, as she's an adult, she's starting to re-examine maybe that wasn't the case, and maybe that was actually abuse. And she's really wrestling with the question of, does she still believe it was a relationship, or does she redefine the events based on her reflections now as an adult in the face of the Me Too movement? So it's a lot of heavy thinking, which is something that I like. I like when people, especially heroines, are wrestling with decisions around something. I like being inside heroines' heads. So that's why I'm drawn to this. And it explores a topic that I kind of personally, this is not a trope that I'm super into as student teacher, so it's one that's always kind of given me the ick, so hence this is something that I'm kind of drawn to in general more so as well. But I think you can understand why I would be a little bit nervous about approaching this book. This is probably gonna be pretty heavy, and not that I don't like reading stuff that like makes my pretty little brain think. It's just that usually I use reading to escape, and if I want to consume content that's kind of touching on topics like this, I would rather consume it as either like a movie, a TV show, or a blog or a podcast, something that's a little bit shorter form. So going after something that's, I mean, it's a proper novel size, it just feels a little bit more intimidating, even though I really feel like this would be a good read and that I would actually like it if I just got my crap together and actually read it. And I even have this physical copy. This arc is really, this is my friend's arc, by the way. That's why I have this. Yeah, it's got like these really like nice edges and everything. And it's like the advanced reader copies, it looks really nice. So I really have no excuse not to read it. But every time, like I said, I check it out on a regular basis from the library, and then it just sits in my hold and I return it. I chicken out every single time. But that's my first one. The next one on my TBR that scares me, it's for a completely different reason, and it's My Name is Tris by Julie Ann Adicott. This is a standalone. I don't think this one is on KU. I think it's published wide, and it's like a pitch black. I don't think it's a romance. In fact, I think in the blurb it says very specifically it's not a romance. Some captor captive, potentially. There is elements of human trafficking. I'm really curious about this one because Goodreads has it tagged as both an MM romance and an MF romance, and the blurb isn't really super clear, so I guess I'll find out when I read it. But Trist is a very conventionally attractive man, and he uses his beautiful exterior for very sinister activities. Sounds like he's probably involved in human trafficking and specifically involved in the capture and training of the individuals. So if that's not dark and messy enough, he also is talking about how he's really obsessed with his sister. She's his hardest fought possession. I'm really hoping that's a step sibling. But also there's a guy named Glenn, which I'm sorry, that name choice just feels really out of place for a dark romance. That sounds like a man that's gonna be doing my taxes. But something about Glenn, our tax accountant, he's not really a tax accountant. I have to stop saying that. He's very calming to Trist. And he also really sees this person as his, but he knows that if he's continuing down the path that he's currently on, There's no way he can keep Glenn in his life. I am kind of nervous about this one for a couple of reasons. One, it's pitch black, and not that I'm scared of that. I do have to be in a particular mood for it, and I really do enjoy very pitch black romances / bordering on it's not a romance. I have no problem with that, but Cynthia was reading it. Her handle is Kindle After Dark. She said she had to take a break from it because it was dark, dark, dark. When I just skimmed reviews really fast, mostly because I was trying to figure out if it was an MM or an MF, a lot of insinuations of like, this drags you to hell and back, like there's psychopaths in books, and then there's Tris, like it really playing up like how dark it is. So I'm not taking that pitch black designation lightly. And also it does explicitly say in the blurb that it's not a dark romance. It doesn't have an HEA, so it's more of like a love story. I'm kind of fine with that in really dark romances. I don't necessarily need characters to end up together, but it does make it a little bit less appealing to me just as someone who really loves a good romance. But like there are certain pitch black romances that I've read where I haven't needed or even wanted that cut. Again, it's that pitch black part that really just scares me. Next up, we have Flock by Kate Stewart, and this is part of a 3-book series. I believe it's a Why Choose romance. I think it's small town. It's really hard to tell because the blurb is so vague. Seriously, if you've ever read the blurb, it's word salad. And everyone keeps what this book is about pretty tightly under wraps. It's kind of impressive. I have heard a couple of spoilers out of context that don't really mean anything. From what I can tell, the heroine was ill as a child. I believe there is some sort of love triangle in the present day. There's some sort of complications with it. So I don't know if it's Why Choose, Menage, Love Triangle. I don't know where this is headed. And I've heard that the second book in the series makes people cry. And some people have likened it to Credence. So why does this book make me nervous? Why does this book scare me? It is a beloved and very popular book. And I always want to be part of like the crowd that loves a book. I want to love books that other people really love and be like part of the fandom. Like I love that. But what is popular now with a lot of people is not really well aligned with my taste. It's kind of a double-edged sword because I'm really curious about it because everyone loves it. I want to be part of it. But at the same time, I know my taste kind of runs in a slightly different direction than other people's taste generally in the book community at the moment. So it makes me nervous that I will be like the one hating ass. I don't like doing that. It's not fun. I don't like it. And there's also with that Why Choose element, I have to really love how Why Choose is executed. There's a select few authors that I really trust to pull that trope off. But that said, I have purchased the audiobooks for the entire series, so I'm thinking at some point to force myself to read it. I'm probably going to do a reading vlog with the whole series. I don't know how else I'm going to get myself to read it. Following that, we have Deadly Vow by Haley Inez. Hello! Yes, unfortunately we have to do a voiceover. Good news, this is the only one for the video, I promise. I nailed the rest of it. Good for me. Okay, but with this, I don't know why on the cover itself it says Haley Stewart because on Goodreads she's listed as Haley Inez. I don't know if she has pen names. I don't know what's going on. But if you want to look it up on Goodreads, she's under Haley Inez. I'm not insane. Well, I am, but for different reasons. Okay, back to the video. And this is a standalone. It's a dark mafia romance. It's got a forced marriage. This is about Elise and she's our heroine. And for her, marriage is going to mean something very, very different than our average person who views it as being with someone that they love forever. Yeah, not for her. She is marrying due to her father's orders. She's, in the mafia mob life. She is not prepared for the man that she's about to marry. Luca is the second in command and is going to become the capo after her father. So hence he's arranged this marriage. He is very cruel and will destroy anything that gets in his way. And he wants absolute, complete control. She really just doesn't know what being married to Luca is going to mean for her. I am nervous about this one. It's tropey goodness. This sounds like a mafia romance that I've read before. I love forced marriage. I love this idea of like having to marry the big bad guy. Like I eat that up. But the ratings on this book are crap. They're absolute crap. I think it's got a 3.39. It's not good. But some of the top ratings have 5 stars. I'm kind of wondering if it's either one, too dark for people, which can happen, especially with Mafia, because there's a lot of variations of the level of darkness. And if you're someone that likes lighter Mafia and you accidentally get one that's real dark and real nasty, that can be jarring, which is fair. I don't know if that's playing into it. I also saw in the blurb that at one point this was edited and updated. Apparently that they needed an editor to go through and there's a lot of grammatical errors. So I don't know if that tanked the rating initially and it's kind of like fighting its way back up. But like I said, the most recent ratings were quite good. So I'm curious. And I think I own this book. I think I might have gotten it in like a Stuff Your Kindle Day type of thing. I think you can tell from the blurb that it sounds good, but that rating, that's really bad. Like a 3.5 generally is kind of where it's like, okay, something went wrong. There was a wrong turn here. The next book I'm scared of, My Lovely Tragedy by my girl Marie Anne, is a standalone. This, to be very clear, it is a love story, no happily ever after. It's not a romance. So once again, we have a really vague blurb. It's a little bit hard to tell what it's about, but what I know is that it's a dark romance, heavy themes of mental health. There's a large age gap. I think I saw somewhere that it was like 17 years. It's got like hurt, comfort, and slow burn. And all the reviews that when I just like skimmed through really fast said that it really messed them up. I've seen people absolutely bawling over the ending and talking about how beautifully it's written. And I've read other stuff by this author, so I know the writing's gonna bring it. She wrote one of my favorite romances. Why does this book scare me? I don't know if I can go without an HEA. I like the idea of reading a love story on occasion, but there's part of me, again, because of the escapism, because I want the fantasy when I'm reading, I don't know if I can go without it. I don't know how I'll feel. Again, I've read books without HEAs before. I've been fine with them, so I don't know why I'm so nervous about this one. I think I know why. My assumption with most love stories is that one of the characters is dead. That's my assumption, because I'm like, why else would they not be able to be together? And especially with like the name of the title, like doesn't that seem like that's probably what happened? But like I said, I've seen a lot of people say that this is beautiful, that it's heartbreaking. I remember seeing videos of people just like bawling their eyes out. And I also really want to get to a lot of Marie Anne's backlist because she's not writing at the moment. And I want to consume all of her backlist because I want to read everything that she's written because I love her, but also I know that I have a limited number of books. I don't know, maybe this will just be like the last one I get to or something. All right, next up is maybe out of left field. It's Follow Cost by Quill Carter. This is the first in a series. It's an dark dystopian romance, and it's got elements of horror and sci-fi, which I love. If you didn't know, I used to be a sci-fi and fantasy reader. Like I read novelizations of Star Trek episodes, so my nerddom, it's up there. Not the point. So what is this book about? We have an apocalypse that happened, I think it was like 230 years ago, it said in the blurb. It wiped out everything. There was some sort of form of radiation or something, and it's turned everything into a wasteland, and cannibalism is a way of life. So we have one of our heroes, Reaver. He lives in like a small block or like a town that is controlled by a ruler that may be responsible for triggering the apocalypse in an attempt to grab for power. How that works out with it happening 230 years ago and him still being around, I don't know, but horror sci-fi elements, so maybe he pickled himself. He really prides himself on being cold and cruel. I mean, if you're willing to radiate most of the population to gain control, I mean, I think you can just claim that you cornered the market on that one. But Reaver ends up noticing a new person in town, which I can't imagine would happen very often if this is the setting. This person seems different than the rest of the people, and he's so intrigued he starts stalking this individual. So why am I scared to read this book? I mean, besides the obvious, there's cannibalism in here. That's a little terrifying. It's over 800 pages. It's part of a series of multiple 800-page books, and it's a new to me author. I've never read anything from them. Also, this is written by a guy. I haven't read a ton of romances that are written by male authors. And also, this is from like, I think I saw the publication date was like 2014 or something like that. I'm curious about the tropes and the writing because pre-2020 writing is so different. It's gotten like way different with the rise of book talk, especially when we're talking about indie published stuff. Like 2014 would have been on the early end of indie publishing. I'll be honest, this is another one. I've had it downloaded on my Kindle for months. One of the gals that I follow, oh shoot, I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but I'll insert her Instagram handle if I can find it here. She was talking about there's certain books that wouldn't care if you got fired for reading this book. And she was like, this one consumed me mind, body, soul. And she doesn't talk like that very often about books. And so it just intrigued me. And the cover's really intriguing. I don't know. There's something about it being so thick, so chunky that just, it's hard to want to dive in, especially when you don't know that the author is good or not. It would just suck to be like 500 pages in and be miserable and not have finished a book, you know? It makes me a little bit nervous. It makes me a little bit nervous, but it is downloaded on my Kindle. Who knows? Maybe I'll dive into it sooner rather than later. All right, next up, we've got another popular one. Binding 13 by Chloe Walsh. So this is a first in a series. I think this is the first book in a duet that follows the same couple, and then there's like a longer series and each couple gets a duet, something like that. Don't quote me on that. I haven't read any of it yet. It's a sports romance. The hero here is Johnny. He's a star rugby player at, I believe it's his high school. It's kind of confusing because the blurb says college and it refers to like a private school. Johnny, he ends up taking interest in the new girl because she's showing up with bruises and some sad eyes, and he likes a girl with some sad eyes apparently. But the thing is, she's kind of a distraction. He needs to stay on top of rugby and he's already dealing with some injuries and he's trying to impress the scouts. He's got a lot on his plate. He can't afford to be distracted. So our girl with the sad eyes named Shannon, and she has been bullied at her previous school, ends up getting pulled out, starts in this private school about midway through the year. So she's kind of just like fish out of water. She's trying to move forward. It sounds like she becomes the target of bullies once more. Johnny boy, I'm gonna assume, has to come to her rescue. Why am I intimidated by this book? Based on your previous knowledge of the other books and why those scared me, I'll give you a few seconds. Did you say it's really long and also beloved? You would be correct. This book is almost 700 pages. It is wildly, wildly popular. And again, I don't tend to love a lot of the same things that are very mainstream. I wish I did, but what I like out of books just seems to be a little bit different than what's popular. It just is what it is. But because it's popular, I'm really curious about it. There's also a couple of other things that complicate this issue further. I can't tell if this is YA or new adult. Again, confusion because of the college. I think this is actually high school if you were a US person. And I've heard very mixed things about the writing. Someone said that it's like boring and has a lot of random details and there's like whole chapters that don't really matter. Kind of makes me think of Crave by Tracy Wolf, which has a whole chapter, I think, about the character's bedspread. I've read books like that before. It's not my favorite, but also I think because I've heard it's potentially YA, I don't know if there's spice in here. I don't think that there is. And again, this is a first in a duet. There's another 700 page chunker that I would want to read. Our final book that I am intimidated by, that I'm scared of, that makes me nervous, but I also kind of want to read it. Ominous by K.V. Rose. Fun fact, I thought the title of this book was Omnibus for the longest time. Where did the B come from? We don't know. The title makes a lot more sense now that I know the real one. This is a dark high school romance love story? I don't know. And it's got heavy features of mental illness. So this is interconnected with XIII, so I don't want to say anything because there's overlap with the characters and it could be kind of spoilery, so I don't even want to say the characters' names. The high level overview is that the hero and heroine meet in high school. They both are recognizing that they have some dark and twisted tendencies and they fuel each other's obsession and lust with one another. And it says they lose their morals and their innocence and maybe their minds, which sounds so good. And I loved XIII. That one has stayed on my brain for just an absurd amount of time. The hang time of me thinking about this book is so much longer than a lot of other books that I've read. So I want to be back in this world. I want to read this, but I don't know how it could have an HEA. I think this is probably another case of a love story. I know what the character is doing during their college days. I don't know how that could work. And also, something I didn't know, but in prepping for this video, I happened to come across the length of this book, and once again, it's over 800 pages. What in the Sarah J. Maas is happening? 800 pages, it's so long. there we have it. Those are a bunch of books that really scare me, that are on my TBR that I really, really want to read, but I'm also so intimidated. I would love to hear what about you scares books on you. That's not a correct English sentence. I would love to know what books make you nervous. What books scare you on your TBR? Why do they scare you? If you do get nervous about books, do you like pull them off your TBR? Do you just leave them on there like myself and just let them fester and linger for years and years? What do you do in these scenarios? And also, what are the things that make you nervous about books? Is it the length? Is it unknown or new authors? Like, what is it? I would love to hear. I would love to know. I love chatting with you guys in the comments. Also, if you've read any of the books that I've talked about, state your case. Convince me I should read it. Please do. Please sell me on your favorites. But with all of that, don't forget to like this video if you liked it, subscribe if you want to see more of me, and I really, really hope I see you on my next video. Bye-bye!